full set list revealed for all 5 of the Elestrals Starter Decks as well as the main set. I have a lot to talk about and discuss with all those products. So if you're interested, this is the video for you. And in this particular video, I'll be breaking down the Ohmperial Starter Deck, where I'll be going over the deck strategy and the deck as a whole. I'll be going over the version exclusives and what I think of them, and then rounding it off with the buyer's guide. So let's get right into it. So as I outlined in my new player starter deck guide, this is definitely a classic control deck, as you've got a lot of tools which control various aspects of the game. And really, a control deck at its core controls some aspect of the game to manipulate it in your favor, resulting in a victory. And here we've got a lot of that. Toxion is a perfect example of controlling the spirit deck. Galvanom is a perfect example of just controlling what cards are on the board by destroying stuff. Rhysceros is a floodgateer, meaning that it just slows down your opponent's plays, and it does that by preventing all non-thunder enchanted Elestrals from attacking the turn they come out, so summoning sickness if you play a game with that. You got hand destruction and spark hit. You've got aDrive to look at top 3 and grab a particular one. Jolton to grab a stadium. Boombat to destroy an Elestral. Spine to send an Elestral's attack to 0. Wormite to subtract attack. All these control an aspect of the game in some respect here. So that's really what you want to do. But past that, with a control deck, you really want to be controlling one or a few aspects of the game so well that it makes it difficult for your opponent to progress the board state, and ideally you'll win off of it. So control is a very broad term here, and also very hard to get down since it is so broad, kind of learning it. And it also requires you to have a really good understanding of the game, its mechanics, and even an understanding what your opponent deck wants to do to know how to most effectively use your control tools as well. So I think the biggest issue with this deck, despite having so many great control tools, is it just doesn't do one thing well enough. You're just kind of controlling a little bit of everything, so which ends up just being a road bump for your opponent instead of a force that's just completely blocking them from being able to play part of the game, which is really what you kind of want to be. It's not a perfect example here, but that's how this deck feels to me personally. So kind of just I broke down a lot of the cards that are control tools. You also have some more down in the runes. Zeus to minus attack. You've got Thunderbolt, which lets you force your opponent to expend spirits. Earthquake to destroy. Shield to bounce. Pandora's Box to stop searches. Thunderstorm to destroy runes. Again, just a ton of ways to destroy your opponent's runes, but there's no real payoff to any of this sort of control. Like, really, you would rather want to focus around maybe, say, controlling your opponent's spirit deck by forcing a ton of expend, or slowing down your opponent's plays so you can set up for something. Another example would be Spark It, having a lot of discard to kind of keep your opponent off their hand while gathering information as well. So it does a little bit of everything, but doesn't really have that payoff here. And payoff here, like, you have Signetric into Ohmperial, but you really, how it works here, you just really want to turbo into it. Mainly if you're running Signetric, sure, you can kind of control aspects of the board and try to allow you to, through that control, get into Ohmperial, but then you really want more of like a floodgate type effect to get into your Ohmperial, because Ohmperial does expend a Thunder Destroy card, which is really good. But again, this card doesn't just like stop your opponent from destroying your Elestrals or attacking over them to safely get into Ohmperial either. So it's a bit kind of mixed in that, where it's mainly the Signetric here to try to turbo into Ohmperial, or try to get into Ohmperial off its effect. Doesn't feel like it quite matches here, because it's more of a you turbo into it than a control tool here. So it would be better, I could see it at least a bit better if through controlling the game you could get out Signetric into Ohmperial to help you further your control, but that's just not the case. Like, you need 12 Thunder Spirits. In a control deck, you're not really being as conservative about your resources as you would with some other strategies, so you're definitely going to drop below the 12 spirits pretty quickly on. I mean, just look at Galvanom having to expend 3 Thunder to use its effect, so that pretty much sums up this deck as well. Oh, I also forgot to mention Crackle here. Good control tool. It controls your spirit deck recovering, so that is another mention there. Really going over the rest of the cards I haven't mentioned. I don't want this buffing up your Elestrals. Okay, just hit over stuff isn't really a control tool though. I mean, sure, you can control the board with your Elestrals as well, which isn't too bad. but this feels like it fits more of an aggressive strategy than a control strategy with having to attack over. Circle the Skies, as I've said in all my other reviews, it is not necessarily a card of a specific strategy. It's very flexible in what it can do. So sometimes it'll be really good. Other times it'll probably just be a dead card. Good Ambrosia, good control card to recover your spirit deck. You're controlling your own deck. Nectar of the Gods, draw more cards. It's good to see more control tools. And I really think that was about it for this deck strategy. Definitely high skill. It definitely teaches you what control cards look like and control the board, and it definitely will reward you if you're good about knowing how to use these cards to control the board. But again, I think you're just going to lose more often than not before you can really learn some good lessons on how to better pilot control here. So unfortunately, I wish I could give a better review of this deck, but this is the third deck I'm reviewing right now. Honestly, I think it is the weakest of the bunch so far in that regard. But moving on from that, let's get into the version exclusives. So there are 3 version exclusives here: Toxeon, Galvanom, and Zeus. So starting off with Toxeon here, it is a 4 attack, 2 defense, 1 Thunder Spirit Elestral, which reads, when this Toxeon receives 1 or more Thunder Spirits, your opponent must expend 1. So controlling your opponent's spirit deck, just a simple way to just kind of get rid of 1 spirit from your opponent's spirit deck just by enchanting it. Pretty good here. It also lends itself to some funny Nexus shenanigans like Spark Hit, where if you can stick both of these, you're forcing your opponent to expend while discard 1. That is, I think, a more sound control strategy that's built around, and I've definitely felt the pain of it before. Even though it definitely isn't an amazing deck right now, I think it's more true and will teach you more of what a control strategy looks like. And you also have notable Nexus of the Sky does, or not Nexus of the Sky, Circle the Sky does allow Toxeon to synergize with Toxeon, because this is not a once per turn effect. As well, it receives it when it's first normal enchanted, and then any additional spirit, even if it's already been used. So pretty cool card there for some spirit control. And I definitely think this card has some potential as well. I think just at a base level, being able to enchant it to expend 1 from your opponent's spirit deck is pretty good. It's really cheap. It doesn't really cost you a spirit until Toxeon goes away. 4 attack's fine. It's not amazing, but you definitely have other ways to do it. To kind of not to work around it and buff it up. Not so much buff it up, but you've got Mount Olympus to buff it up. You've got Thunderbolts and Zeus to buff it up. You've got Zeus here to subtract stats from your opponent. So Toxeon being at 4 attack is definitely good enough when you have all those other control tools. It would be better at 5 attack, but it'd probably be a bit too good if it was at 5 attack compared to Necro. So 4 attack makes it just fine here. Though with that being said, though, I do think Thunder is looking to be one of the weaker types, just because it doesn't really have the payoff it needs for the cards it wants to do. It's got some pretty cool cards here, but alas, I think that's kind of where Toxeon will fall. It seems like a pretty good card on paper. And I think if we get just the right deck for Thunder, like a good burn deck, you'll definitely want to run that. But as of right now, it doesn't feel like it really does one thing super well, which is what's going to hold it most back. Like, it's got a good effect, but not an amazing effect, and an element that really feels like it needs more great effects. So that's Toxeon. Definitely keep a lookout for this card moving forward, as it might pop into things, but I don't think it's one of those cards where you're like, yes, this will definitely see play at some point, will definitely be an include. It's just always going to be one of those cards that you consider, because it's not bad. Galvanom here is the ascended form of it. It's got 6 attack, 2 defense, costs 2 Thunder Spirits, and reads, you can expend 3 Thunder in order to target and destroy 2 cards on the field. So a powerful control tool here. 6 attack is fine. It's not amazing. It can still be hit over by someone, or crashed into by some 1 spirits, and can't compete with 2 spirits. But frankly, it doesn't matter. You're just here to destroy 2 cards on the field, which is really powerful. 3 spirits when it's a 2 spirit body might be a bit much, but at the same time, destroying 2 cards on the field is really powerful. Get rid of that back row attack over something. Get rid of a big Elestral on board with its effect that isn't immune to Elestral, or can't be targeted by Elestral effects. It definitely has a lot of power behind it as well. And 6 attack is enough where it's not easy to answer either. So this definitely seems like a pretty scary card, an expensive card. But ideally, if you're just able to destroy 2, even if it costs you 3, you just you're controlling the board so well that ideally you can just start aggressing your opponent anyway, so you can kind of keep using the 3 spirits and it'll spiral into a victory. So really, I think this card does have some potential. I think it is a bit slow because it's a 2 spirit, though it kind of has to be that powerful of an effect. And so I don't think this will be super meta right now, just because we have faster decks that can more easily answer a card like this or just won't care too much. It will slow them down, but won't necessarily get you a win since it's so expensive. But at the same time, I do think this definitely has a lot of potential moving forward. So watch out to it, with really the only limit being that how good are two Spirit Elestrals, and is that expend 3, destroy 2 cards too expensive as well? But I mean, at the same time, still destroy 2. I can't say that enough. Destroy 2 sounds really, really good here. So watch out for this card for sure if we get a really good control deck that has Thunder. Finally, Zeus here is the Divine Rune of Thunder right now, and when the Zeus is cast, you can chain up to 3 Thunder to it. So it normally just costs 1, needs 1 to stay on the board. So quite nice there, just to be able to load it up. And you can disenchant 1 from the Zeus in order to target an opponent's Celestial and give it -3 attack and -3 defense until the end phase. So sort of like a reverse Demeter, and which is quite interesting. And honestly, Zeus is a little bit better than Demeter, just because by giving the opponent's Celestial that minus stats, you don't necessarily need to rely on one Celestial to hit over it, unlike Demeter, where you pump up one Celestial to hit over it. Instead, if you have a few small things on a board, you can just minus your opponent's attack or defense, so both of them have a chance of hitting over if they have some ways to disrupt it. So quite nice there. Still not super powerful. I don't think giving up 1 Thunder Spirit for a stat decrease is the best effect, especially if you're running into counter runes. So not the most powerful, but at the same time, it does have some inherent synergy, being a card on board that you can throw spirits on for Nexus stuff. You really don't have like a Tectoros type card for just counting spirits on board here, so it doesn't necessarily have that. But also there are some cards in the main set, mainly one Volt Tempest, that requires a Zeus on board for a powerful effect. So there's definitely some inherent power to it being a Divine Rune. Not so much right now, as we only really have Spark Hit, but also moving forward, there will be some good ones. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say just Spark Hit. You've got Toxion plus like Circle the Sky and Altar of Stars. So it's still nice just to have the spirits out there board, even if there aren't too much payoff right now. There's definitely some more in the future. You also have the whole Tempest combo, but also just like Demeter, I think that Zeus will get replaced once we get a better Divine Rune, unless you're playing a deck that specifically wants it, which would right now be Volt Tempest. We could get other cards, but honestly, the other card that interacts with it, Thunderbolt of Zeus, I just don't think is that great right now. It's not as a powerful enough artifact, even though it does sound pretty strong for you to really warrant trying to set up this combo here. I think Demeter has more inherent power and just a better deck to fit into right now, even though Zeus is the slightly stronger one, but they're really comparable as well. So I still like the card for sure. It's nice that it exists, but it's definitely feels like one of the weaker ones just due to the element it's in and how it interacts with it. So the buyer's guide. I think this deck definitely has some great control cards, but at the same time, while not being the strongest, all I can really say for it is that I think this deck is really only worthwhile if you're wanting to main Thunder, mainly to pick up your playset as Zeus, because most of these cards in the main set, I shouldn't say just Zeus, but both Zeus and Toxion here, I think have the good chance of being played in Thunder decks right now. So if you're planning on maining Thunder, definitely pick it up. But otherwise, I think this is a pass. There really isn't too much from it that you can't get from the main set, especially the cards that you want to run with other decks like Jolton to grab the Stadium or Boombat for its destruction effect. All these cards also come in the main set, including aDrive. So I don't see much reason to pick it up unless you just want to get a starting point for Thunder. But if you're main Thunder, you're getting anyway with Toxion and such. So it's not the best one to pick up in my opinion. You do get some pretty good cards here overall, but yeah, just really only pick up 2 if you're maining Thunder. And I don't even think there's much meta reason to even pick up Zeus. Even Toxion here. So I can't even, like the Majesty deck, I can't even give the recommendation of like if you're a meta player here. Honestly, it's just if you want to play Thunder, pick up a copy or 2 of this to get your cards. But in summary here, the strategy of the deck is definitely control. It's got a lot of great cards that do control, that have a control-focused effect, but at the same time, they're all not focused and just kind of all over the place, making this deck feel more like a little bump in the road than an actual like control deck that's threatening and controlling a certain aspect of the game. And it really doesn't help that Signetric really wants to be turboed out into Ohmperial, and the stuff to stall doesn't even let you really get out Ohmperial anyway, and you really want to do that earlier in the turn. So the payoff's a bit weird for it. It's a bit kind of strung all over the place. So overall, it's a control deck. It'll teach you some control tools. It just won't feel that great because you're not really winning off of it. As for the version exclusives, we've got Toxeon, Galvenom, and Zeus here. Toxeon is a pretty good pickup. I think it's a decent card, not an amazing card, so it still has some chance in seeing play in some decks, but I don't think Thunder's going to be that meta relevant, so therefore Toxeon probably won't be seen too much, unless you want to throw it into like an aggro burn deck, but I think there are better tools for it anyway. Right now they don't need Toxeon. Galvenom, I don't think it's going to be too great right now, but definitely watch out for it as we get more ways to control the board with Thunder, more like Riceros type cards to easily get out Galvenom. And I think it's definitely a card you need to watch out for, even though it is a bit expensive. And Zeus, really only if you're maining Thunder. This is a must-have until we get a better Divine Rune, or like you're wanting to play Mold Tempest for its effect. But other than that, it really isn't, I don't think, especially notable compared to some of the other Divine Runes. And of course, the Buyer's Guide, really only pick up 2 of this. If you're playing on maining Thunder, get your Toxeons, your Galvenoms, your Zeus, and just a good basis for Thunder itself. So, with all that being said though, I hope you've been enjoying this video, and if you have, please leave a like, comment down below your thoughts on this deck, and I encourage everyone to go read the comments down below to see what people's opinions are of it, see more than just mine. I think it's really informative and will give people better information if you're still deciding on what decks to pick up or how to play it as well. Also, as I've been saying, thank you so much for the view count on the new Player Elestrals Starter Guide. I'm so glad to see that it's been super helpful for a lot of people here. It's been really great to see. And if you've been enjoying my content, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell to be notified when I upload more Elestrals content. Because after this video, there should be 2 more videos for the final 2 start decks, as well as just plenty more deck profiles, gameplay, the base set breakdown. I also plan on doing that. All that's coming out real soon, so look forward to it.